all your old head guys like myself. All of our FEs currently, until later in the fall when we get our first brand new FE out of tech school, but all of our FEs have cross-trained. So they're all going to have some perspective on previous jobs and what other, squadrons, other MAGCOMs, other airframes, all of that. They're going to have perspective on that. But we also have pilots that have cross-trained. We have pilots that are prior enlisted, so they have a lot of perspective on that. We have loadmasters that have cross-trained. Sergeant Zelonis, a prior cop. I mean, that's some perspective that I'm sure is a lot different than what we have here in the 22nd. So I'd say, please reach out to these folks and then use their experiences, use their perspective to enhance your own. But for me, for my bio, I've been in the military almost 22 years. It'll be 22 years in November. And of all my experiences, I think it's 6 different squadrons, not including any tech schools. The 22nd, the Double Deuce, is where it's at. And by the end of this, hopefully you'll get some understanding of why. So what I want to first start off to say, because it's going to kind of lead into everything, is that I've been like super anxious to talk to you guys. This is not like my forte. Again, like Colonel Kramer, just killing it on not only this whole PD thing, but his videos as well. When the thought of PD was first started, I was on board. I was like, yeah, let's do this. And in the back of my mind, I was like, yeah, but I don't want to do any of the talking. So I'm just going to try to delegate, like true leadership fashion. And that's kind of because I've been like, almost my whole career, I've been somewhat of like a slacker. Okay. So, especially in like high school, I slacked off. I would get hundreds on the test, but I'd turn in like 1 problem out of 60 on homework. So that's just kind of like how I've been my whole life. And it kind of sucks, but I don't know what to do to get out of it. Right. So when I first heard about this PD, I was like, yeah, cool. But the one thing that happened when Colonel Kramer asked me is I immediately said yes. And that's basically how I live my life now, is just saying yes all the time. So I will eventually divulge into that. But what I've found so far is that saying yes to things that are challenging, especially things that I initially just want to say no to or have an excuse, saying yes has been kind of like my greatest attribute in the Air Force. And it's gotten me to where I am today. It's gotten me some amazing assignments, some amazing opportunities. And had I have not started to say yes, and had I have stayed in the mind frame of saying, no, or not really going after things and getting after them, my experience would be totally different. So, all right, so onto the bio, right? So I entered the military, I think, at the worst possible time and with the worst possible outlook. So I entered in November 98, November 18th, 98, which is entering in that week kind of screwed me for everything. So it screwed me for Thanksgiving, my birthday, which is on the 23rd of December, screwed me for Christmas and New Year's. And I was like, well, that was a bad idea. And but I came in open maintenance as well. So that means that they could just give me any maintenance job. It could have been the worst job, the best job, who knows? I just came in maintenance. So they picked me for crew chief on C-130, and I got to my first duty station, Moody Air Force Base in Valdosta, in June of 99.
All right.
I don't know what you guys are talking about. I had y'all on mute.
Yeah, somebody's unmuted. Mute yourself, please. All right, so so I got to Moody in June of 99, and I started being a crew chief. And my perspective on being a crew chief compared to what we are now, maintenance sucks. And it sucked then, and it still sucks now. In South Georgia, it was 9 hours a day, for turnover and getting your toolbox. And some days it was 12-hour days, which actually led into like a 13-hour day prior to getting turnover. And you're out on the hot tarmac and you're just getting worked like a dog. There was zero job satisfaction. So once you fixed one job, you just went on to like the next job, fixed that airplane, went on to the next airplane, fixed that airplane. It was just the same thing over and over and over. Work, fix the jet, shut up, We don't care about your feelings. We just want you to get these jets done. You know, leadership would not come around and say, attaboy. There was nobody standing up at an all call saying like how good a job you did. What was interesting about that back in those days, in 99, is I came into a squadron that was both aircrew and maintenance at the same time. So it would be like the people downstairs and upstairs if we were all the double deuce, which might not affect us so much as flyers, but when I was a maintainer, it really highlighted like the chasm between how the flyers had it and how the maintainers had it. When it was time for me to get like a below the zone package, you know, I was a really good crew chief and I was down to work. I mean, again, like I said before, I wasn't going to go out of my way to do things, but I would do the work and I would do it hard and I wouldn't complain. And when it came time for the below the zone package, my supervisor told me, you know, I think that you could really make below zone package, but you're never going to be any of these load masters over here. So we're not even going to put you in. Sorry, bro. That's just the way it is. And that was kind of the way it was my entire time there. You know, I left that squadron after 3 years. They didn't give me a medal. They really didn't give me like a goodbye. You know, my comrades did, you know, like all the camaraderie between all the crew chiefs was really high. And I'm still really good friends with them to this day, but it was because we had like such a shitty job and we were treated so poorly. The only thing we had was each other. So I was really close with those guys, but we never got any breaks. We just worked all the time. The only people who got breaks were smokers. And, you know, I would go out into the smoke pit and try to chill out with these guys. And they'd be like, Eash, what are you doing? You don't smoke. Get out there. Go fucking fix the jet. And I'm like, I want a break too. Why can't I have a break? They're like, get out there and fix the jet, right? So I tried to take up smoking with my friend. Me and my friend both tried to start smoking to get some breaks, and I just couldn't do it. So I'm not a smoker. So I ended up buying some candy cigarettes because I thought that'd be hilarious. And then I was hoping, you know, I'd get a break. And the expediter came around and saw me with my little gum candy cigarette, and I puffed on it. A little bit of smoke came out. And I think it lasted about one chuckle before he said, get in the truck. You're going to fix this jet. Ha ha. Again, I was not a huge fan of maintenance. So I left there, and my next duty station was Misawa Air Base in Japan. And I was still maintenance, but I was transient alert. So I was basically the guys that just, you know, recover the jets and launch them out. I didn't really have to do any work, but it was really easy. It was super easy. And it gave me some perspective on working the flight line. So I'm like, man, I don't want to ever do that again. But, you know, even though I had an easy job in Misawa and it was amazing living in Japan, you know, it was the same thing for maintenance. You know, the second lieutenant comes around, we'd all snap to attention and just pray to God that we weren't the ones that were getting yelled at. And that's just kind of how maintenance is. It's like the maintenance culture. They don't have similar cultures as the double deuce. They just have, you know, fix a jet and somebody got yelled at, and that's just how it is. And I recently talked with prior Staff Sergeant Engel, who was here as a FE. Now he's Second Lieutenant Engel in the maintenance here at Travis. But I asked him, I was like, hey, I haven't been in maintenance in 15 years. Like, has it changed? And he said, no, it hasn't changed. He said, basically a really good day for him is like when he doesn't get yelled at. And I'm like, maintenance is horrible. So anyway, what I did to make sure that, you know, from I got that perspective of working on the flight line and really getting treated like a dog, like terrible. And I was like, I do not want to go back to that again. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard of a CJR, but the Air Force has what's called a career job reservement or something like that, where if you sign it, you're guaranteed to stay in your job and they won't force you out. And I was like, I am not signing that. No way. I just didn't want to get, you know, forced backed into a corner and just sign and and go right back to the flight line. I thought that was going to be like the end. I was just going to get out. My wife was pregnant at the time. She was like, you're not getting out. That's not going to happen. You got to make a decision. So I started the retraining package, got accepted to be an FE. And let me tell you, it was the greatest thing ever for my military career, because the perspective of maintenance versus when I first put on that flight suit, it was insane. Everybody started treating me better. You know, there was a time when I was at Moody where I walked into the chow hall after working all day long, and they kicked me out like for lunch. I was, I only had like 30 minutes for lunch, so I ran over there to chow hall, try to get some food, but I was too dirty being a crew chief, and they're like, "Get out of here! You can't even eat." And I'm like, "Why can't I eat? Like, you're too dirty." And I was like, "I don't even have time to go change and then come back and then go right back to the flight line." And that's just kind of how they treat you when you're not wearing a flight suit, right? Once I put the flight suit on, everywhere I go, people are like, "Hey, please, let's help you. You're a flyer. Oh, like, you're really important. Let's help you." And literally everywhere you go, it's like that. When you're just a maintainer, you're just out there with dirty boots and stuff like that. People really treat you not that great. And it's one thing that I know my perspective is wearing this flight suit. It's a game changer. And so if this is your first assignment, if you're a brand new load, I really messed up. I should have been a load when I first came in. So my first duty station after being a flight engineer, that was Dover Air Force Base. So, it was a long, hard road to get to be a C-5B flight engineer, but I was definitely enjoying not being maintenance. That was like the main thing. Not being maintenance, the job was great. You're starting to get a lot of job satisfaction. No matter what you do, people are like, "Yeah, you did that mission." It's such a completely different mindset. But like I said earlier, I was still kind of like a slacker. So I wasn't trying to go do the, above and beyond. If somebody asked me, "Hey, would you want to do this?" I would just be like, "Man, I don't know." Same thing happened when it became time to be a instructor. So we're like, "Hey man, you want to be an instructor?" And I was like, "Nah, I'm good." I mean, that was like my straight up answer to like my leadership. I was like, "Nah, I'm good." And the reason was like, I think when I was maintenance, I didn't see any like, there wasn't going to be any reward, or there wasn't going to be anything in it for me. Maybe it's a little bit selfish, but I was like, why would I go out of my way? Because, it wasn't going to work in maintenance. And no one had talked to me. No one had shared their perspective on doing these things, or what it led to, or how it made them feel, or any of that stuff. So I was just kind of like, nah. And then I missed out on like a really good assignment, something that I thought was going to be amazing. And it was because I wasn't an instructor. And that was like, maybe I should do that. So that was like my first foray. I was like, okay, fine, I'll be an instructor. Again, I relented to do it. I wasn't like jumping up to do it. And it took another like very forced, very, unexpected, real snap out of it for me to instantly gain some perspective that, me just like, even though I was a really good flight engineer, everybody thought I was a great flight engineer. It was just that I just didn't go past that, right? So there's a difference between being a really good flight engineer and trying to do more and trying to better the community, better your squadron, all that stuff, and just even just being a good engineer. So when I just came back from instructor school. I wasn't even certed yet, and I went on a mission. And while downrange, we went without a flying crew chief. So in Al Assad, it was my job to remove the fire bottle, and I did not remove the fire bottle, and the airplane taxied out. So that was my extreme, holy shit, forced perspective that me just going along with everything was not going to work out. So here's the fire bottle story. Before I was starting Eash, the guy that made the toll program, the old crusty guy here, I was the guy that ran over a fire bottle, and it was 100% my fault. So what happened was we were in Al Assad, and we're just taking off, and we go to retract the gear, and immediately we get a call from Tower, and they're like, "Hey man, your guy's jet was throwing sparks like crazy going down the runway. All the way till liftoff, there was just sparks everywhere." We go to lift the gear, and the nose gear stays in transit. And I'm sitting there looking at my other engineer. I'm like, what could possibly do that? That makes no sense. I have no clue. Like, is it a bad bearing? Like, oblivious to what I had just done. And we started running all those checks and stuff like that. And our AC at the time, he piped up and said, "Hold on, guys, just wait. Eash, did you remove the fire bottle?" And in an instant is how I gained that perspective that, maybe I just wasn't taking things serious enough. Maybe, I wasn't doing everything with a purpose. Yeah, I don't know. But it snapped me out of it immediately. And I immediately, we talked in the past about extreme ownership. I don't know if you guys were there for that all call, but immediately I said, yeah, I didn't remove the fire bottle. That's my bad. So we came back around and ended up Q3ing me, Q3'd my AC, delayed the mission, and it could have been really bad. So what happened was the fire bottle wedged right in the middle of the nose landing gear. And when we taxied out, it just stayed in the gear. It didn't, it was just riding there like on its wheels, chilling out. And once we started taking off, it was just scraping down the runway, making these huge sparks. When we rotated, this 300-pound fire bottle full of halon rotated with us and shot out at 150 miles an hour down the runway. It could have been bad. It could have hit somebody, hit a house. I don't know. I mean, this was in Iraq, but what had happened is it made the light in the nose landing gear come loose, and so the door wasn't able to close on the light. As far as damage, it only did $1,000 damage to the gear because it put a cut in one of the tires. But it definitely damaged my it definitely damaged me, and then it also damaged the squadron's DTS fund. So it gets worse, right? So we ran over a fire bottle, and I'm feeling like the pariah of the squadron. I'm like, why me? I thought I was an amazing engineer, brand new instructor. I'm like, why me? But I still had to come together. I still had to figure things out, and we still had to get the jet back somehow. And in comes another Dover jet and lands right in Al Assad. And I know they had heard, everybody in the entire squadron had heard. I'm like, damn it, they're going to come up on my jet and they're going to talk to me, and this is going to be the worst thing, So I was really in a low place for a long time. We got back to the squadron, and I'm walking into the squadron, and I'm like, yeah, it's me. And, everybody's just giving me shit for like the longest time. It sucked. It really sucked. And then we found out that we're going to have to go to AMC to explain ourselves. So because of what I did, we're going to have to go to AMC, and a 3-star general wants to see the whole crew, and he's going to yell at us. He had basically said, prior to this happening, that the next C5 that has a taxi incident, you're coming to explain yourself to me. So it was me, the entire crew, to include the flight doc. It also included our jump seater, who was at the time Captain Trumbull. It included the squadron commander and the squadron chief, and the group commander and the group chief. That whole entire package of like 15 people, we had to go to Scott in our dress blues on a Tuesday, because back then we had Blues Mondays. So if you were there on a Monday, everybody on the whole base would be in their blues. That wasn't going to work for the general. He wanted to be in his ABUs, all of us, to include Captain Trumbull at the time, now Colonel Trumbull, and the group commander and my squadron commander. We were all in a room in dress blues waiting to get yelled at for something that I had done. And yeah, like, it just changed me from then on. That bill was not footed by AMC. That bill was footed by the squadron. So that DTS bill came to $40,000. So that kind of sucked. After that, I started upgrading to M model. That's when we were first getting the M model. And, I was struggling with like, how am I going to reinvent myself? How am I going to, lift my spirits back up? What can I do to overcome this? And that's when I started saying like yes to everything. Like, it didn't matter what it was. I'm going to say yes to it. I'm going to try my hardest, see what happens. And at the time, Busby, prior retired Senior Master Sergeant Busby, he was in the back office, and he's like, he had saw that I was, really going to start trying harder. And so what he started doing is he started giving me he started trying to see if he could give me stuff and that I would actually say yes. Maybe he had seen prior. I don't think he really liked me even prior to the fireball incident. And it might've been because, I was just kind of going along with it, but he decided he was going to try to give me some stuff. So he's like, hey, do you want to be a flight chief? And I was just a tech sergeant at the time, like brand new tech sergeant. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. I had no clue what I was going to do, but I was like, sure, I'll try it. And I did okay with that. And he's like, hey, would you want to make like a new told card? Like, we were just starting the M model, and the told card that we were using was kind of like a bastardized edition of the or version of the B model told card. He's like, again, he's probably looking at me like, this guy just, he doesn't do anything above just, his job. He doesn't really care. So I think he was just trying to just throw me a bone and see if this was going to help. So I said, sure, I'm going to try it. And then I remade the told card into what we actually use today. So, these things were lifting my spirits. And I started to see, like, if I say yes to something, he's just going to keep asking me to do more things. And this was like daunting. This is the same thing as me talking to you guys today. I was like, do I really want to do this? But again, I had decided that, I was going to use my experience, use my perspective, and put it to good use. So then he's like, hey man, do you know your shit like on the jet? And I was like, yeah, I really do. And he's like, would you like to come and teach Sims down in Marietta? Because at the time Dover got it, for whatever reason, Dover got the jet first, and they didn't get the Sims first, which to me is like completely backwards. But so we were actually going down to Lockheed in Atlanta, and without a SimStar contract, we actually had to be the ones teaching Sims. So there was only a handful of like the most qualified guys at Dover that were entrusted to teach Sims for like differences, the difference between the M model and or B model and M model. And he picked me, and I excelled at that too. I rewrote some sim like some sim scenarios, and pretty soon I'm teaching refresher sims to evaluators and guys that have been there for 20 years, and stuff that I was nervous to do that as well, but again, I just kept saying yes because I really wanted to reinvent myself, right? So doing all these things, I ended up getting put in for instructor of the year for that year. And at the time I really hadn't been put in for any awards because, like I said, I really didn't do anything. And immediately the group said, like, no, we're not giving the award to Fireball guy. That's stupid, right? But what it showed me is that the squadron really cared about me, and they they liked what they saw, that I was trying to get back on track, right? So then when it came time, the next summer, I wanted a PCS, and because I'd always said, because I started to say yes, and I was really like killing it at that, I was able to get backing from the squadron commander, even the group commander, who had to come with me to Scott to get yelled at. People started going to bat for me, and I was able to get a assignment down to Lockheed Martin Marietta to be a flight test guy. So right away, my perspective is changing. I've got maintenance, then I've got Dover on C5s on the B model, then to the M model. Then my perspective, not just on the squadron, not just on the airplane or the the base or any of that stuff, but now I got a perspective on not being the guy that says yes to being the guy that says yes. So in Lockheed Martin Marietta, we're doing some really cool things. I don't know if you guys know, but that was like when the M model was getting built. So a B model would go down there, they would take off engines, they would rip the entire thing apart to almost like a skeleton. It was crazy, and put it all back together. And I was actually like a flight test engineer. So I was on some of these jets when they weren't even airworthy. I had to have a parachute on and a helmet and stuff because, these jets had never been flown. I was on like the very first flight. We did stalls. We opened 7 left, 7 right in flight. We opened the back doors in flight. We, banked all the way up to like 65, 70 degrees. We did some crazy things. It was super fun. But I continued my I continued my mentality there of saying yes, of, not going to be the guy that just doesn't do something, right? So they're like, hey, would you like to MC this retirement for a really high up person in DCMA? And I was like, same thing as doing this joint PD. I was like, no, that was in my head though, right? Immediately what came out was yes. And, I did pretty good at that. And same thing was starting to happen down there, where people were seeing that I was doing good. And these people were going to go to bat for me when it came time to PCS. And then I had a guy down there say, hey, would you like to help build a toll program? Or he had heard that people down at Warner Robins were going to build a toll program. He's like, hey, would you like to be involved? Same thing. I'm like, what the hell do I know about building a toll program? He thought because I had made a toll card on Excel and just kind of, spaced the lines that equated to I knew how to build a toll program. But I was like, yeah, let's do that. And he's like, hey, I really want to have something that we can show them how we want it to look, so they start to listen to us and we can make this how we want it. So he's like, would you be able to build like a rudimentary like toll program that has some kind of function? And I was like, yeah. And then pretty soon that spiraled into, now I built an entire toll program. And that program that they started to work on, this was 2013 down in Warner Robins. It still hasn't been released for use yet. It's been released for like limited use, but they're still working on it. Meanwhile, the toll program that I built has been approved for use since 2015, early 2015, and we're still using it on every C5 flight around the world to this day. And I had no clue what I was doing when I first started, but by saying yes, by forcing myself to just figure it out and overcome, now I was able to build a toll program. And so building a toll program, always just being willing to do whatever needed of me, no matter what. And then also, starting to get some initiative, starting to do some things on my own, enabled me to have the backing of all my leadership to actually call the functional and have like a one-on-one conversation, with the functional. And he's like, hey, what would you like to do? Would you like to go to Hawaii and fly G5s? And I'm like, okay, I'm thinking about that. He's like, would you like to go to Geilenkirchen and fly AWACS for NATO? And, I had promised my family I would take him to Germany. So we went to Germany in Geilenkirchen on NATO AWACS. So again, I had perspective of, I'm building my perspective, right? So I get to Geilenkirchen and they see what I've done and they know what I'm about. And I was just going to continue it there. And I got there and I was actually kind of determined to not let my perspective of the C5 cloud my judgment on the AWACS, the mission or any of that stuff. And that lasted about 6 months until they started calling me Mr. Galaxy, because that airplane and that mission and the parent MAGCOM ACC is horrible. I do not recommend anybody to ever go to AWACS. It sucks. It was flying still, but I felt like I was right back in maintenance. There's no job satisfaction. You would spin in circles for 11 hours. And when you landed, there's a bunch of guys in the back that are looking on computers. They're doing, I don't know, radar things or something. They would never tell me, so I didn't have any job satisfaction. There was no post-mission crew rest. I'm like, get out of here. I need some time off after this week-long trip. And they're like, nope, we'll see you back tomorrow, 8 o'clock. It was eye-opening. And so I can definitely tell you that my perspective on AWACS is don't do it. However, it afforded me more things. It afforded me more opportunities to excel at leadership. It afforded me the time to be in Germany and we go to Europe all the time on Fred. If you're lucky, you might break for a little bit and you'd be able to go see a castle or something like that. But to actually live in Europe, I'd say if you ever get the chance for that, do it, because when you can actually plan out a trip to go see the sites, it's so much better than if you're just there broke and you just make some plans for like that day or whatever. So that part was cool, but I would just not recommend AWACS. And I've seen those. We also have members in our squadron that have the perspective from AWACS as well. some people that were back-enders. And, if you ever think about cross-training to do that, reach out to one of them first, because it's terrible. So again, more perspective. ACC sucks. AWAC sucks. But I continued my my mentality there of, using my past perspective to better myself, always saying yes. They're like, hey, would you like to be the one that runs all of the professional development? Like there's the enlisted like professional development courses that are mandated for like tech sergeants and prior to master sergeant, stuff like that. They're like, would you like to be kind of like the commandant of that thing on GK? And I immediately said yes. I was going to have to be giving, speeches all the time. That did not interest me at all. I was already a master sergeant at the time, even like I am now, and I'm not really going for rank. Like, trying to make senior master sergeant is not my motivation behind saying yes to anything. My motivation now is just trying to help people, trying to better myself, and I like helping out the squadron that I'm in. So doing all those things, again, gave me the backing from the functional at GK to be able to reach out and talk with the functional for my job, and said, what do you want to do next? And I said, what's available? Same thing again. He said, there's Hawaii again. I'll send you to Hawaii. No big deal. And I really wanted to go to Hawaii, but my wife said no. So I was like, well, if I can't get Travis C5s, which they were overmanned at the time, I was like, if I can't get Travis C5s, then I'll probably just retire. And he said, okay, you got Travis C5s. So I had an assignment to here over a year before I was even PCSing from GK. So then I come into this squadron, and I've got 5 other squadrons, different airframes, different MAGCOMs, mission sets, maintenance, all of these things. And perspective really showed me how great we have it here in the Double Deuce. This squadron, it's amazing. I love the squadron. The commanders here have been amazing. I knew Lieutenant Colonel Damon really well prior to when he was a commander before Lieutenant Colonel Pollock. I knew Lieutenant Colonel Pollock really well. Obviously, I told you that I have known Lieutenant Colonel Trumbull for a long time before I forced him to go get yelled at by a 3-star general. Me and him spent a lot of time on the scheduling desk, just BSing back and forth, and not just the commanders, but the leadership, the people here in the Double Deuce, the culture is great. Freddie's, the Fred is great. The mission set here is a lot more diverse than Dover. Dover, when I was there for 6 years. It was a lot of downrange and a lot of back. A lot of downrange, a lot of back, and then anything out of that was so rare that it would just immediately go to the reserves. So we've got that going for us. We've got great weather. California's not bad except for the home prices. But really, really reflecting back, this is a great squadron to probably end my career in. I don't think I'm going anywhere after this. An amazing squadron. So what I would encourage you all to do is, seek out people in the squadron, seek out their perspective. That's my condensed version all the way up until almost 22 years now, but seek out those people. Their experiences, their perspective can help you, have a better understanding, knowledge, etc. on the Air Force, on the aircrew community, on the Double Deuce, on, what else is out there on the Air Force. Just don't, what I would say, don't take this for granted. This place is great, being a part of this flying community. Especially if it's your first duty station, there's so much worse that you could do. And in my perspective is is very limited compared to there's probably other people that have even more perspective. Like I said, reach out to Sergeant Zalonis and ask him about being a cop. That sounds horrible. But yeah, for me, that's all I've got as far as that I wrote down my notes and can remember as far as my perspective on the military thus far. It's been a crazy ride. 22 years has actually flown by. I don't even understand how that's happened. I'm already 40 with gray hair. It's crazy. But I want to say a huge thank you to Lieutenant Colonel Kramer for all his work thus far. The PD has been pretty amazing and a lot more robust than what I originally thought it was going to be when I started talking about it. So thank you to him. Thanks for allowing me to speak today on my perspective. We're going to open up to some questions or if anyone wants to share their perspective from here on out. And then also, if you ever want to come talk to me about anything, I'd be happy to share more with you. And I think a lot of the guys in the squad, especially the older guys that have the perspective, I think they would love to share it with you as well. So with that, I'll yield back to Lieutenant Colonel Kramer, and we can start some discussion.
All right, man, I appreciate it. I'll save any of my remarks if we have time remaining, but we do have a raised hand from the venerable Jeremy Bennett.
Hey, what's going on? Actually, just this whole talk and everything was great. And it reminded me of a story that I heard forever ago, but it's about three blind men. And these three blind men are walking along, and they all ran into an object. And one of them said, "This is a wall. It's flat and it's hard." One said, "No, I'm pretty sure this is a vine. It's long and limp." The other guy said, "No, this has to be like a pillar. It's kind of tall and narrow." In the end, they were all killed by an elephant. So the story is that everybody's perspective is correct and valuable, even if it's not your own, because there's a million different ways you can look at things. So if you find yourself in conflict or maybe you disagree, sometimes maybe it's because you don't have the same perspective. You need to try to take a step back and figure out what that is, because without multiple perspectives, ultimately we all kind of fail. So that's a little story I wanted to share there.
That's awesome, man. Thanks. Also got a hand raised from Mr. Robert Rogers.
Hey, first, I want to say, Jeremy, definitely hitting the gym. Good job, man. Like the muscle shirt.
I like to work out during our sessions. It's a nice background.
Good deal. Thanks, man. But for Master Sergeant Eash, you talked a little bit about the AWACS, and I dropped in a little late on the conversation, but I think you ultimately described it as you didn't really like that assignment too much, or the job. What would your advice be to people that find themselves in a job that they just don't really like, or maybe in a position, whether it's, whatever contributes to it, whether it's maybe leadership that they don't, I don't want to say don't like, but there are things, there are outside factors that kind of contribute to either like job unhappiness, dissatisfaction. What kind of helped you get through that part of that assignment?
No, that's a great question, and that's exactly what I struggled with in AWACS. Like I said, it took me about 6 months. I don't even think I was done. I think it took me maybe 6 months just to get qualified on the airframe, but it took me about that long to just realize that this was going to be a really terrible time job-wise, but living there was great. So I think you really need to look at the positives, look at the negatives. The positives for me was that I was living in Germany, so I tried to take advantage of that. But at the same time, there was plenty of people that knew that I hated it there. But that doesn't mean that I didn't still give it my best. I still try to do I still try to do above and beyond. I still try to do exactly what was asked of me. I still continued my tradition of just saying yes and just seeing what would happen. Like, it didn't matter what it was. I was just going to say yes. And I left there as an instructor on the AWACS. That wasn't I can definitely see where people cannot be happy, even here in the double deuce. And like I think what Bennett just mentioned, like, everybody's experience is their own. So I would never discount your perspective if you think that the double deuce sucks. However, it wasn't, I kind of thought the same thing about Dover and the mission there. And I was kind of bored with Freddie, and I went to GK and was like, yeah, I'm going to forget about, I'm not going to be that guy that just talks about the past. I'm going to be the guy that is, let's go AWACS, hoorah. And honestly, I just couldn't do it. It's because I didn't have the perspective until I got to AWACS. But I'd say your insight is valuable. If you're in a job and you're like, this job really sucks, it probably really sucks. But you can't let that you can't let your feelings about the job affect you as a person, right? Like, you still want to do as good a job as you can because that's who you are, or doing really good at that job even though you hate it. I personally think that's why I started saying yes to everything. I personally think it pays dividends later on. You might think this job sucks. You might think where you're at sucks. And it's going to be super difficult to put your best foot forward. But if you do, maybe it's karma. I don't know. I don't believe in karma, but let's say that it's something similar to that, where you're going to be better for it. Even if it doesn't pay dividends directly later on, that gained perspective that you have will now make you appreciate something like the double deuce. If you were in a terrible job and then you get to the double deuce, now you're going to be able to appreciate what you have next even more. And then you'll be able to give even more in that job as well. So yeah, I think even a terrible job or something like that can be valuable in your career, your life lessons, your goals. I'm going to move on I'm going to retire from here, move on to a new job, and I'll be able to use the AWACS perspective when I get some office job sitting there that I think sucks as well. I'll be able to think, okay, I've done this before. How can I better myself, etc. So I think it all combines into our shared, or not shared, but all combines into your perspective, into your knowledge about the world. And sometimes, especially in the military, when you go somewhere and you can't really quit, you're kind of stuck there. So I think it's an awesome question and something to think about. And I hope I answered it.
Yeah, thanks, man. I think we got time for one more before we wrap up. And Jesse Calico has got his hand up.
Sorry, yep. I have just one more question for Sergeant Eash. I know you talked about the dread and the anxiety that you felt after your accident in Al-Assad, and just about seeing your teammates again when the other Dover plane landed. I was just kind of wondering, what sort of things did you hear from other people in your squad that let you know they were on your side, or they're willing to be on your side to help you get back into the things and kept you motivated to improve and get better?
Yeah, thanks. No, it was super difficult. We were grounded in Al-Assad for, I think, 2 or 3 days while they talked about, what are we going to do? The mission obviously was canceled because, we delayed or something, but we still had to bring the jet home. So they're like, do we Q3 him and then bring a new jet out? And so we actually were on Al-Assad for a couple of days. And again, we were in Al-Assad, and, it probably only took an hour or two for the whole damn squadron to know. And this was before Slack. And then in pulls a Dover jet, and I'm like, oh God, this is the worst. And it's the first thing that happened was the engineers just walked right up, and lots of jokes, and it hurt a lot, is what I'll tell you for sure. But prior to that, I had always been a good engineer, and I never really said yes to anything. I wasn't going to go out of my way to help the squadron, to help the Air Force, or anything like that. But one thing that I did during this thing was just have the most extreme ownership. So it didn't matter what it was. In front of the 3-star general, he's like, whose fault is this? And I'm like, it's mine. And the 3-star general didn't want to hear that. He wanted to yell at everybody. We had a flight doc on our crew, and the 3-star general asked the flight doc, like, did you see the fire bottle? Why didn't you say something? The flight doc's like, like, why would I say anything? I'm the flight doc, right? And you know, throughout the entire thing, you know, I've always said it's my fault. I didn't blame it on anything. I didn't blame it on not having an FCC. I didn't blame it on it being dark. Even to this date, I don't even know why I missed it. You know, like, it's just one of those things. I don't think back then that I took everything as seriously as what I need to. One thing that I didn't share here, but I share with a lot of my students, especially if I tell the story, is that habit patterns are like extremely important, because I don't think I really had a good habit pattern back then for when we didn't have a FCC with us. You know, now since I've been in Travis, we always fly with the FCC, but back in those days, there was times where we didn't fly with one, and you had to go, you know, remove the chocks, remove the fire bottle. You'd have to service oil. You'd have to do lots of stuff on your own, you know, gas it up and stuff like that. But I never built good habit patterns. And like I said, I think I just took everything with a grain of salt, and it was the wrong thing. But I think more than anything, me owning up to it, you know, not making excuses, made everybody more willing to back me up. You know, if I would have been like, man, it's not my fault, it was dark, I think they would have been like, you know, screw this guy. This guy's a jerk off. You know what I mean? But that was probably the one thing that really helped me. Again, there was I had a friend, I'm sure some people know, Sergeant Talamontes. He's down at Kelly now, but he went to Chick-fil-A, and they had just unveiled like the spicy chicken sandwich, which came with like a cardboard cutout of a fire extinguisher. So I come back to the scheduling desk, and there's a little fire extinguisher there. Even when I left DCMA, right? Even when I left Atlanta, I left Atlanta with a guy down there that was in Dover at the time, and he cut out a little picture of a fire bottle and pasted it on my going away plaque. So it's there forever. I have to look at this damn. I mean, I'm not going to put it up. It's just like sitting off to the side or something. But yeah, I mean, there was lots of jokes to go around, and like I said, I was in a dark place in my mind for a long time. But coming back from it, owning up to it, and then, you know, just I also use it now as like I said, a way to teach students. You know, like I'm never going to like shy away from what I did, and so that's helped me a lot too, and it's helped everybody else see me, you know, see past that. So I'd say to anybody out there, anybody can make a mistake. Anybody can get Q3'd, you know, LOR, Article 15, all that stuff. It's what you do after that's really going to shape how people view you, and then also shape your attitude to life going forward. You know, it's a perspective that I have that nobody else has. Who else has been yelled at by a 3-star general? You know, and he's like, no, I'm not going to give you a coin. And he also, you know, and we're all sitting there in our service dress, and I look over, and like the AC's like almost crying, and like I'm almost crying, and we're like, what the hell's going on? And I look over, and there's my group commander looking at us all, and then they're like, it was just, you know, saying, like, it's crazy to relive through it. Every time I think about it, it's an absolutely crazy story, but that's my perspective that I have, and I'm better for it. And I think, you know, anybody going forward, that, you know, that would be my advice. You know, always own up to your stuff, and just make yourself better for it, because we're all human. What are you going to do? So appreciate the question.
All right, thanks, Sergeant Eash. I'm gonna kind of cut her short here, since we got a 10 o'clock to get to, but I just had a few points. First, thank you. You're gonna hear some repeated mantras, because the message really doesn't change as we do these PDs, but there are mentors among us. As General Goldfein said, every airman has a story, but that's only part of it, because we're all walking around with stories, even if you're brand new or if you have a lot of experience. You may have that story, but thanks to people like Sergeant Eash, who are willing to demonstrate that vulnerability and that humility to actually tell their story, that's how we get better. Not only did he give us some words on job perspective, but also life perspective, that if you take some of those lessons to heart, you know, it may either save you from heartache, or when heartache comes, makes the experience a growing experience as opposed to something negative. Other things I picked up on, and hopefully you did too, is that mistakes aren't fatal. Growth is constant, and at least from my own career, I can tell you that certain mistakes actually propelled me forward probably more than not making those mistakes would have. Something else I want to point out is, you know, a lot of big ups to the Double Deuce in the talk today. Yeah, we do got it good, but that doesn't mean things are perfect. You never arrive. You know, we're always striving to be better. But talks like this, it's like being a parent, right? You don't want your kids making the same mistakes you did. And then if they can learn from you, then, you know, the family evolves. If I could quote The Departed, or quote Leonardo DiCaprio quoting Hawthorne in The Departed, but families are always rising and falling in the country. It's the same thing in squadrons. Organizations rise and fall. And it's one of the things that keeps them rising is our ability to learn from the past. You know, those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it. So reach out to people. You know, they don't have to be a master sergeant. They don't have to be a major. Reach out to each other and talk and have these conversations and learn each other's story. It makes us all better, and it strengthens our culture. So I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks again to Master Sergeant Eash. This has been great. And, you know, we'll see you guys out there. I'll post this on YouTube and let people know in case they missed it. This was a good one. So thanks to you all. I'm hang out as the room closes out. If I don't see you, I'll see you. Have a great weekend.